Picture this. You wake up, you pour your morning coffee, you look out the window, and it just hits you.
Oh, out of nowhere.
Right, completely out of nowhere. This incredibly sudden, chilling realization just washes over you. You realize that you are living at the exact same mistake your parents made.
And we aren't talking about minor things, right? Not like buying a house with bad plumbing.
No, no, not the small stuff. I mean the massive, life-altering patterns. We're talking about a repetitive, exhausting struggle with prosperity, or a painfully familiar conflict in your closest relationships.
Yeah, or just this heavy, persistent shadow over your self-worth that you can't seem to shake.
Exactly. You look at your life and suddenly you feel as though you are reading from a phantom script.
Huh.
It is like you are caught in a cycle, tracing the identical footsteps of those who came before you.
It is a profoundly disorienting experience. I mean, truly. That realization often hits like a physical impact to the chest.
Oh, it knocks the wind out of you.
Because the moment you perceive that phantom script, you see the boundaries of an invisible cage you never even knew you were living inside. It shifts your entire perspective.
Yeah, you go from feeling like you are the author of your life to, well, feeling like a character in a rerun.
And the frustration of that moment is just deeply overwhelming.
Because for you, the person actually living it, it feels entirely inescapable. I mean, you try so hard to pivot.
You really do. You change your habits, you move to a new city.
Right. You try to build something entirely different from your family's legacy.
Yeah.
But this invisible tether always seems to snap you back to the same baseline.
It feels almost as though you are chained to this ancient, unyielding weight, right? Like a destiny that was written long before you even arrived on the scene.
Exactly. And that feeling of powerlessness, that sensation of being anchored to an unavoidable fate, I mean, that is one of the heaviest burdens a person can carry.
It absolutely is. And it is completely valid to feel the crushing weight of that cycle. But, the objective of our conversation today is not to sit around and commiserate over feeling trapped.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
We have a very specific mission here.
Right. Our absolute mission here is to completely dismantle the illusion of this inherited cage. We are going to embark on an extensive exploration of what truly governs these repetitive cycles.
We really need to get into the actual mechanics behind the repetition.
Exactly. And most importantly, how you possess the absolute sovereign power to rewrite the script of your lineage. We have to move past this vague notion of just, feeling stuck.
We have to look at the underlying machinery. So let's pull that thread immediately.
Let's do it.
Because when people hit that wall, when they feel that invisible tether snapping them back, there is a very common narrative we all kind of instinctively reach for. We look for a villain.
Oh, always. It is human nature.
Right. We introduce this idea of an external force, an ancestral doom, maybe a cruel twist of fate, or a literal curse that has permanently imprisoned us in a negative reality.
It feels like someone or something has locked the door from the outside and just thrown away the key.
Yeah, because it's much easier to say the universe is against me than to figure out what is actually happening.
But that is the false villain. It is the most seductive trap of human perception, really, because it immediately absolves us of the responsibility to change.
I mean, if an external force has doomed you, then your suffering is just a tragedy of circumstance.
Exactly, and you are merely a helpless passenger on a doomed train. But we have to establish a core, unshakable principle right from the beginning here.
Lay it on me.
External curses, in the way we traditionally conceptualize them as unavoidable imprisonments imposed by outside forces, they are an absolute illusion.
Oh, I want to pause you right there, because calling it an illusion is a massive paradigm shift for a lot of people.
I know it is.
If it is an illusion, like if there's no external villain tying us to the train tracks, what is genuinely occurring?
Yeah.
Because the pain feels incredibly real.
Oh, the pain is very real. But what is genuinely occurring is a phenomenon we can understand as generationally misdirected energy.
Generationally misdirected energy.
It is not a curse imposed upon you, It is a pattern operating through you. To understand this, we need to move away from mystical thinking entirely.
Right. Let's keep it grounded.
We have to look at how human perception and the surrounding environment interact. Think of it this way. The universe operates much like a vast, limitless cosmic warehouse.
A cosmic warehouse. Okay, I like this. I need you to flesh that out for me, though. How does this warehouse function?
Well, this cosmic warehouse contains the raw materials for every conceivable human experience. Boundless prosperity, absolute ruin, profound connection, complete isolation.
So it holds an infinite inventory of literally everything.
Everything. Now, the entity managing this warehouse, the universal mechanism itself, is entirely impersonal. It does not judge what you ask for.
Wait, so it doesn't look at your request and say, oh man, this person has suffered enough. Let's send them joy instead of sorrow.
Not at all. It does not have a moral compass or a preference for your well-being. It simply responds to a specific product code.
And what exactly generates this product code? I mean, how are we placing these orders?
The product code is your personal energetic frequency.
Okay, frequency.
Right.
We need to ground that term. Because when people hear frequency, they think of like crystals and invisible magic.
Right, and I am not talking about some esoteric invisible magic. I'm talking about the measurable biological hum of your nervous system.
So we are talking about actual biology and psychology here.
Exactly. Your subconscious expectations, the literal filtering mechanism of your brain. It is the precise signal you are broadcasting into the environment.
So if you unconsciously broadcast the frequency of struggle,
The warehouse flawlessly, efficiently, and without an ounce of malice delivers a reality of struggle. It just matches your internal code to the external inventory and ships it directly to your doorstep.
okay, here is where I have to throw a flag on the play. Because this is where the conversation gets incredibly sensitive.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Yeah, it gets, frankly, a little dangerous if we aren't careful. If someone is experiencing immense hardship, say they're living through a cycle of devastating poverty, right?
Right.
Or they're enduring toxic relationships that exactly mirror the chaos they saw growing up. Isn't it incredibly harsh to suggest they are ordering this struggle from the cosmic warehouse?
It sounds like it, yes.
It sounds uncomfortably close to victim blaming. I mean, it sounds like telling someone who is drowning that they actively ask for the water.
That is a vital distinction to make, and your hesitation highlights exactly why this concept is so often misunderstood or,
Yeah.
completely misapplied.
Yeah, because nobody wants to hear that they are the cause of their own trauma.
And they shouldn't hear that because that's not what's happening. This is where we must separate the immense difference between conscious desire and unconscious resonance.
Unconscious resonant.
Yes. No one consciously desires to suffer. When someone wakes up in a state of lack, they are not actively, consciously wishing for more lack.
Right. Consciously, they are totally exhausted. They are probably praying for relief every single day.
They are desperate for a different outcome. They are reading the literature. They are trying to save their resources. They are actively trying to escape.
Exactly. They're doing the physical work to get out.
But here is the catch. The cosmic warehouse does not fulfill orders based on conscious wishing, desperate hope, or frantic surface-level actions.
So it completely ignores the conscious desires.
It fulfills orders based on your unconscious frequency. The tragedy here is not that we choose suffering willfully, that would be absurd. The tragedy is that we unknowingly broadcast an inherited frequency of limitation.
Oh, wow. So we inherited a corrupted product code from our lineage.
Exactly. Think about it. Our ancestors experienced profound trauma, scarcity, or fear, and that literally rewired their nervous systems over the passage of eras.
And then they passed those deeply ingrained, hypervigilant survival mechanisms down to us.
Yes, so we keep handing this inherited, corrupted code to the warehouse manager, all while consciously expecting a delivery of peace and abundance.
And we externalize our innate power to unseen forces, believing the world is doing something to us.
When in reality, the world is simply matching the signal we inherited and just continue to emit.
So we are talking about a biological and psychological inheritance, not a magical one. The struggle isn't a punishment from the universe.
Not at all. It is just an impeccably accurate fulfillment of an unconscious order. An order placed by a nervous system that is basically still living in the past.
That is terrifying, honestly. But, it also strips away the victimhood.
It really does. Why do you say that?
Because if I am the one holding the scanner, even if someone else programmed it long ago, I can learn to punch in a different code.
That is the turning point of personal sovereignty right there.
Right.
But to change the code, you cannot simply pretend to broadcast a different signal.
Right. You can't just slap a positive affirmation on top of a dysregulated nervous system and expect the warehouse to change your delivery.
Exactly. The universe sees right through that. You have to understand the machinery that generates the signal in the first place, which brings us to the actual architecture of personal resonance.
Let's pull that machinery apart, because, as we established, frequency cannot merely be a vague feeling.
Now, it has to be structured.
If it governs our reality, so absolutely, if it literally filters what we perceive and what we attract, it must have a tangible structural anatomy. It has to be built out as something we can actually point to and alter.
It is entirely structural. Your personal frequency has an objective anatomy comprised of 5 exact pillars.
5 pillars. Okay, I'm taking mental notes.
These are the components that make up the signal you broadcast. If you want to change what the cosmic warehouse delivers, you must audit these 5 pillars.
And what are they?
They are beliefs, identity, attention, emotional convictions, and thoughts.
Beliefs, identity, attention, emotional convictions, and thoughts. Okay, we need to break these down thoroughly.
We do, because I suspect this is where the mismatch happens between the life we want and the life we actually experience.
Totally. Let's start with beliefs. What are we defining as a belief in this context?
Well, beliefs are not just passive opinions you hold about the world, like preferring one color over another. They are the foundational rules your subconscious mind accepts as absolute law.
So they act as the architectural blueprints for your reality.
Exactly. A belief is a conclusion that have drawn, usually very early on, that your brain now treats as an undeniable gravitational fact.
Give me an example of how that plays out.
Sure. If you harbor a deep-seated belief that prosperity is inherently corrupting, or say that people from your background are destined to labor endlessly without reward.
That belief sets the fundamental boundary of your reality.
Yes. Your brain will literally filter out opportunities that contradict that belief because it considers them impossible, or even worse, unsafe.
It is the operating system running quietly in the background. You don't even know it's running.
Yeah.
And then, building on top of those beliefs, we have identity.
Right. Identity is who you perceive yourself to be within that operating system. It is the role you assign yourself in the grand narrative.
Like, are you the victim of your lineage, or are you the architect of your future?
Precisely. If your identity is heavily tied to being the one who always struggles, or the person who has to fix everyone else's chaos, your reality will continuously manufacture situations that validate that identity.
Wait, the reality will manufacture situations just to prove me right.
Yes, because the ego is terrified of inconsistency. It would rather be consistently miserable than inconsistently happy.
Wow. Let me just process that. It would rather be consistently miserable.
Because consistency feels like survival to the primitive parts of the brain. So if your identity is wrapped up in the struggle, you will subconsciously sabotage the peace just to feel like yourself again.
That is a brutal truth. The idea that we sabotage our own peace just to maintain a familiar, albeit painful identity, that leads right into the third pillar, which is attention.
Yes, attention.
This one feels a bit more active, though, right? Something we might actually have conscious control over from minute to minute.
It is. Attention is the currency of your conscious focus. Where is your spotlight directed right now?
Right. What am I looking at?
Exactly. The human brain has a specific filtering mechanism, a network of neurons that sifts through the millions of pieces of data in your environment.
And it only brings what is relevant to your conscious awareness.
Right.
Because otherwise we'd go crazy.
Right. And what decides what is relevant? Your attention. Are you endlessly cataloging the evidence of your curse?
Oh, like scanning the horizon for the next disaster, scrolling through endless feeds of negativity.
Exactly. Or, conversely, are you fiercely concentrating your attention on the architecture of your desired outcome? Energy flows precisely where attention is directed.
Because attention literally wires the neural pathways in your brain. So if I am constantly looking for proof that I am failing, my brain will happily become an expert at finding it.
It will highlight every single rejection and completely ignore every compliment.
Man, that's heavy. And then we have the fourth one, emotional convictions. Now, this feels much heavier, much more entrenched than just a passing mood or a fleeting emotion.
Because it is. A fleeting emotion is just a passing storm, You can feel a moment of joy or a flash of anger, and then it dissipates.
It passes through you.
But an emotional conviction is the climate. It is the deeply rooted, visceral truth you feel in your bones and your nervous system. It is somatic.
Somatic, meaning you feel it in your physical body.
Yes. You might consciously think about success, but if your emotional conviction is a persistent, gnawing expectation of failure.
Like a tightness in your chest or a churning in your gut whenever you take a risk.
Exactly. That conviction overrides the conscious thought every single time. It is the emotional gravity of your internal world. It is the feeling of, this won't work out, it never works out for me.
Which is so hard to fight. And that leads us to the final pillar, thoughts. How do thoughts fit into a system where emotional convictions hold so much gravity?
Thoughts are the daily chatter. They are the repetitive mental dialogue we all have.
And while a single thought might seem powerless against a deep emotional conviction.
Right. A single thought won't do much on its own, but thoughts are the tools that either reinforce the other 4 pillars or slowly begin to chip away at them.
Okay, so it's the repetition, The repetitive nature of your thoughts eventually crystallizes into beliefs.
which shape your identity, direct your attention, and fuel your emotional convictions. It's a complete interconnected system.
Okay, here is where it gets incredibly complex. I am looking at these 5 pillars: beliefs, identity, attention, emotional convictions, thoughts. What happens when there is a mutiny on the ship?
A mutiny, I like that. What do you mean?
Say I am actively trying to change my life. I am doing the work right. My thoughts are saying I am moving toward prosperity. I am directing my attention to new opportunities.
Okay, so those two pillars are aligned.
But my emotional conviction, deep down in my gut, is terrified of the vulnerability that comes with success and expects the rug to be pulled out.
Aye.
How does the universe, or this cosmic warehouse we talked about, interpret a mixed signal like that? Does it just average it out and give me a mediocre result?
The universe does not average out dissonance. Never. It responds to the dominant frequency, and the dominant frequency is always dictated by your deepest unconscious alignment.
So the deepest one wins.
Always. Usually, the emotional conviction and the core belief carry the most immense weight. This brings us to the requirement of absolute equilibrium.
Absolute equilibrium, so they all have to match.
All 5 pillars must be in flawless alignment. If you hold a conscious thought of prosperity, but your emotional conviction holds a deep-seated expectation of scarcity, the frequency is entirely corrupted.
The product code is scrambled.
And the warehouse cannot fulfill the conscious request. It just delivers the scarcity because that's the heavier, more dominant signal.
It makes me think of a grand orchestra. Imagine you have this world-class symphony sitting on stage.
Okay, picture the symphony.
The string section, which represents your conscious thoughts and your attention, is playing this incredibly joyous, soaring, beautiful melody of success and forward momentum.
They're completely in the zone, playing their hearts out.
Right. But over in the back, the percussion section, representing your deeply held inherited beliefs and your heavy emotional convictions, is hammering out a slow, mournful, relentless funeral march.
That paints the picture perfectly. Because what does the audience actually hear?
Well, if you sit in the audience, you do not hear a joyful symphony with a slightly sad drum beat in the background. You hear absolute chaos.
Pure dissonance.
The resulting sound is pure, jarring dissonance. It is a wall of noise that makes you want to cover your ears.
And the universe, the cosmic warehouse, only responds to the unified harmony of all 5 elements.
So if the orchestra is out of tune with itself, the warehouse receives a signal of chaos.
And it delivers a reality that matches that chaos. You end up in situations that look promising on the surface but always fall apart at the last minute, perfectly reflecting your internal dissonance.
And we must recognize that this dissonance is rarely something we invent from scratch on our own, right? We didn't just decide to have a chaotic orchestra.
No, we absolutely did not. And this is where we return to the concept of the inherited script. We are talking about the echoes of an endless tide.
Right, the generations before us.
There is a profound biological, psychological, and energetic reality that an endless tide of ancestral echoes is passed down through generations.
We are talking about how memories, traumas, and deeply ingrained worldviews don't just vanish when a person's life concludes. They leave a structural imprint on the lineage.
We see this extensively in the study of behavioral inheritance and in epigenetics. The lived experiences, the immense stresses, the periods of profound starvation or conflict experienced by a vast constellation of ancestors.
They literally alter the expression of our own biology.
Exactly. A nervous system trained to survive a famine passes down a baseline of hypervigilance regarding resources. We inherit these misalignments completely unconsciously.
So we receive the corrupted product code, the discordant sheet music for our orchestra, before we even know how to play an instrument.
That is exactly it. We are born with the sheet music already on the stand.
So someone might wake up every day feeling this pervasive sense of melancholy or a hypervigilant fear of losing their job, even when they are performing perfectly.
And they assume, this is just who I am.
Right, they say, I am just a naturally anxious person. I just have a pessimistic personality. But what you are saying is, we mistake inherited dissonance for our own authentic personality. We think the fear is us.
That is the ultimate tragedy of the phantom script. You are wearing a heavy garment woven by your ancestors, tailored specifically to fit their fears, their crises, and their environments.
And you just assume it is your own skin.
You accept a deeply flawed emotional conviction, perhaps a conviction that the world is inherently hostile and people cannot be trusted, and you build your entire identity around it.
And you never realize that the conviction was forged eras ago by someone trying to survive a completely different landscape.
A danger that no longer exists in your current reality, yes.
But wait, if we didn't consciously choose this frequency, if this orchestra was out of tune the moment we were handed the conductor's baton, who originally calibrated our dials.
We have to identify the architects of our reality.
Exactly. When does the script get handed to us?
To identify the architects, we have to look back to the very dawn of our personal cycles, the earliest stages of human development.
Our childhood.
Yes. The caretakers of our early existence act as the absolute lawgivers of our reality.
The lawgivers. That is a heavy term.
It is accurate, though. During those initial stages, the brain is operating in deeply receptive brainwave states. The subconscious mind is entirely unguarded.
So it possesses no critical filter at all.
None. It cannot analyze a statement and reject it as false. It is the literal womb of reality.
It just absorbs everything as objective fact. A caretaker says money doesn't grow on trees, and the child's brain doesn't think, well, that's just a metaphor for scarcity.
Right. It registers it as an absolute law of the universe.
Everything is absorbed as absolute law. And caretakers, operating entirely from their own unexamined scripts and their own inherited dissonance, program this pristine space with their own beliefs, their own terrors, and their own limitations.
They pass down their survival mechanisms, assuming they are protecting the next generation.
Without realizing they are installing the very bars of the invisible cage.
Exactly. Think about the phrases we hear. Don't aim too high, the fall will kill you.
People like us don't belong in rooms like that. Or relationships always end in betrayal, so keep your guard up.
These statements are passed off as parental wisdom, as protective advice, but they are actually corrupted code being downloaded directly into the hard drive.
They are the specific instructions programming the 5 pillars we just talked about.
Yes. The caretakers define your early identity by how they label you. They direct your attention towards specific perceived dangers based on their own traumas.
And they instill their emotional convictions into your nervous system through their reactions.
Right. A child learns to fear what the parent fears simply by observing the parent's nervous system dysregulation. And they provide the vocabulary for your earliest thoughts.
But wait, I have to challenge the scale of this for a second.
Go ahead.
How can mere human caretakers, flawed, struggling people just trying to pay the rent and figure life out, wield that much power over our entire existence?
That's a fair question.
We are talking about the universe here, right? The limitless cosmic warehouse. Shouldn't the ultimate grand energy of reality have a louder voice than my parents arguing at the kitchen table when I was young?
That brings up a profound point, and it requires us to fundamentally understand the nature of impersonal universal energy.
Okay, unpack that for me.
The highest universal energy, the formless principle that powers all existence, the engine of the warehouse, is entirely impersonal. Think of it much like raw electricity.
Raw electricity. Okay, break that down for me.
Electricity has no moral compass. It has no preference. It does not decide who to warm and who to shock.
It just flows where the circuit allows it.
Exactly. You can harness electricity to power a life-saving medical device in a hospital, providing breath to a fragile life. Or you can use that exact same current of electricity to power an instrument of profound destruction.
The electricity does not care.
It does not pause to evaluate the ethics of its use. It merely responds to how it is harnessed by the circuit. The universal energy simply observes and powers whatever blueprint the subconscious mind dictates.
So the universe isn't a micromanager looking over our shoulder, course-correcting our lives. It's just the power plant.
Yes, it supplies the voltage, but we build the machine it plugs into.
It provides boundless momentum, but your subconscious mind provides the specific blueprint for that momentum.
And because your earliest caretakers program that subconscious blueprint before you have the cognitive capacity to intervene or analyze,
They wield an initial influence over your material reality that eclipses even the highest universal forces.
yes, the universe will dutifully, tirelessly construct the prison your caretakers drew the blueprints for, because the universe only answers to the blueprint.
It doesn't know you want to be free. It only knows your blueprint says build walls.
Precisely. We're essentially running on a legacy operating system. It is built on the fears, the scarcities, and the survival tactics of the past.
And if we never pause to aggressively audit that code, if we never sit down and question every single assumption about our capabilities, our worth, our place in the world, and our relationship with prosperity, we inevitably just become a reiteration of the previous generation,
We are just the newest model of the same old machine.
running the same outdated software, wondering why the screen keeps freezing.
A reiteration perfectly executed. The default setting of the universe is simply to maintain the momentum of the established frequency.
So if you do not consciously, aggressively intervene and rewrite the code.
The warehouse will just set your inherited struggle on an endless automated subscription.
Wow. This feels like the critical turning point of our entire conversation right here.
I agree. We have laid out the map.
We really have. We have exposed the false villain of the external curse. We see how the cosmic warehouse functions as an impartial fulfillment center. We understand the 5 pillars and the necessity of aligning the internal orchestra.
And we know who wrote the original code and why the universe just blindly executes it.
Right. We see the architecture of the trap in stark, undeniable detail. But seeing the cage is not the same as escaping it.
No, it is not.
Knowing the walls are there doesn't make them disappear. How do we dismantle it? How do we take this incredibly heavy, generationally misdirected energy and transmute it? Because telling someone to just think differently after a lifetime of inherited trauma feels entirely insufficient.
It is insufficient. To truly dismantle the cage, we must introduce a foundational, universal law. The law of polarity.
Law of polarity, what is that?
This law reveals an astonishing, almost unbelievable reality about the nature of existence and energy. Profound fortune and devastating ruin, immense joy and crushing sorrow, they are not fundamentally different energies.
Hang on. Fortune and ruin are not different energies. That sounds inherently contradictory.
It does at first glance, yes.
Because they feel like complete opposites. Ruin feels heavy and dark, and fortune feels light and expansive. How can they possibly be the same?
They appear as opposites in our human experience, certainly, but they're the exact same raw material.
I am having a hard time wrapping my head around that.
They are merely operating at radically different intensities of vibration. Duality, the idea that good and bad are entirely separate entities, is an illusion of perception.
I need an analogy for this to make it tangible. Ground this concept for me, please.
Let us look at the elements. Consider a block of solid ice and a rising cloud of steam.
Okay, ice and steam.
Biologically and chemically, they are absolutely identical. They are both composed of the exact same elemental molecules.
Right, they're just H2O.
If you isolate a single molecule from the dense center of a block of solid ice and a single molecule from a billowing cloud of steam, you are looking at the identical substance.
They are exactly the same material.
The singular defining difference between a block of ice that is rigid, unyielding, heavy, and cold, and a cloud of steam that is expansive, light, and capable of generating immense kinetic power is simply their rate of vibration.
The vibration of the molecules.
Yes. The molecules in the ice are moving sluggishly. They are bound together in a dense, low-frequency state. But the molecules in the steam are vibrating with intense velocity, breaking their bonds and expanding upward.
Oh, that is a phenomenal image. So apply this elemental truth back to the generational script and the feeling of being cursed.
Okay, the generational script, the inherited limitations, the immense weight of the struggles you have carried your entire life, that is the solid block of ice.
It feels unyielding, it feels cold, it feels incredibly heavy, dragging you down.
Exactly. But the raw energy locked inside that struggle, the sheer volume of focus and emotional intensity it takes to maintain that trauma, is the exact same raw energy that constitutes boundless fortune and liberation.
Wait, really? The curse and the blessing are the same elemental force.
The exact same force, merely vibrating at different frequencies.
This is a breathtaking realization for anyone listening who feels exhausted by their own history, because it means you do not need to go out and seek some new, external, magical, positive energy to fix your life.
No, you don't have to source completely foreign material to build your future.
Or wait for someone to hand you a new battery. The immense, overwhelming weight of your inherited struggle, the very hypervigilance that has been crushing you, is the exact fuel you need.
You already possess the raw material in massive abundance. You merely have to heat the ice.
That is the core of alchemy. You do not discard the energy, you transmute it. You elevate its vibration.
Your nervous system's capacity for intense anxiety is actually a capacity for intense focus, simply pointed in the wrong direction.
Wow. So what is the heat? How do we apply the heat to this frozen block of generational trauma? We can't just put our minds in a microwave.
No, we cannot.
What are the actual mechanics of shifting this vibration from a slow, heavy dread to an expansive, powerful momentum?
The heat is applied through the intense, uncompromising mechanics of concentration. Let's return to the 5 pillars for a moment.
Beliefs, identity, attention, emotional convictions, and thoughts.
Right. Wherever attention is intensely focused, vibration accelerates. The trap of the phantom script is that our attention is almost entirely consumed by the evidence of the curse.
We concentrate on the lack in our bank accounts. We concentrate on the betrayals in our relationships. We concentrate on the feeling of being trapped.
And because our concentration is locked onto the problem, the vibration remains low, dense, and frozen.
We're essentially locking the ice inside a freezer by staring at it, constantly measuring how cold it is, and telling everyone around us how heavy it feels.
Precisely that. To shift the vibration, you must perform a radical act of internal severance.
Internal severance. What does that look like in practice?
You must consciously sever your attention from the endlessly looping narrative of the struggle. You stop providing the old phantom with the heat of your focus.
Okay, so you withdraw your attention from the problem.
Yes. And instead, you fiercely concentrate your attention on the specific architecture of the desired fortune. You align your beliefs, your identity, your attention, your emotional convictions, and your thoughts entirely upon the reality you wish to inhabit, even before there is physical evidence of it.
It brings us back to the orchestra. You are the conductor, and you cap the baton on the stand.
And what do you say to the orchestra?
You look at the percussion section, playing the heavy inherited trauma, and you say, "Stop the funeral march. We are playing a new symphony, and we are absolutely not taking requests from the past."
Perfect.
But doing that requires ignoring the current reality, doesn't it? It requires turning away from the immediate evidence of the struggle, which feels impossible when the bills are piling up.
It does feel impossible, but it requires an understanding that your current reality is just a delayed reflection of your past frequency.
It is old news.
Exactly. It is a printout of what you were vibrating yesterday. As you enforce that new alignment, as you hold your concentration with unyielding discipline, despite what your current circumstances look like, the energy begins to transubstantiate.
The rigid, heavy patterns of the past begin to melt because they are no longer being sustained by your focus.
The energy frees up, accelerating into a lighter, more expansive state. The ice becomes steam, and that steam provides the upward momentum to elevate your external reality.
This concept of energy pooling, solidifying, and then needing to be dismantled makes me think of the anatomy of a phantom.
The anatomy of a phantom. Tell me more about that.
Well, in a lot of storytelling, particularly in expansive generational epics, there is this brilliant universal concept used to depict evil or struggle. They present this idea that human negativity, fear, sorrow, and deeply held limiting beliefs don't just vanish into the air after a battle or a tragedy.
They linger.
Right? They pool together. And over the passage of eras, as generation after generation feed these dark pools with their own misdirected focus and unhealed wounds, the energy builds immense momentum until it literally manifests as a tangible, monstrous weight.
A phantom that actively haunts the living.
Exactly. It takes on a life of its own.
That narrative device is a perfect, striking, metaphorical mirror for the biological and psychological reality of inherited limitations. The phantom script only possesses power because it has been fed.
Fed by what?
By the undivided attention, the validated fears, and the unconscious acceptance of countless generations. Your ancestors contributed their panics, their unexamined beliefs, and their deeply held emotional convictions to this collective pool, giving it immense form and density within your nervous system.
So when we feel that invisible tether snapping us back when we are about to succeed, and suddenly we self-sabotage, or we meet someone wonderful and immediately push them away, we're essentially wrestling with the accumulated momentum of our lineage's unresolved fears.
You are fighting the phantom.
That phantom is incredibly strong because it has been eating at the table of our family line for a very long time.
It has immense historical momentum. But here is the critical vulnerability of any phantom, literal or psychological.
What is it?
Momentum requires a continuous surface to roll across. It requires your active complicity to keep moving forward.
Oh, I see.
The moment you consciously reclaim your internal authority, the moment you refuse to accept the inherited beliefs as absolute law and stop reacting to the phantom's threats, you shatter that surface.
You take away the ground it walks on.
Exactly. In behavioral psychology, they refer to the sudden worsening of a habit before it disappears as an extinction burst. The phantom fights back when you stop feeding it.
You starve the phantom by cutting off its food supply.
You starve it of its only food source, your attention and your emotional conviction. By stepping out of the inherited identity, you break the circuit.
The energy that comprised that monstrous weight loses its structural integrity.
It returns to a formless state. And this formless energy is the ultimate canvas. It is just waiting for you to mold it with your new intentional frequency.
This isn't just an abstract philosophical theory either. We see this happen. We see people shatter the momentum of generations in real time, shifting their entire external environment by fundamentally altering their internal state.
We see it consistently when individuals finally understand the mechanics of their own sovereignty. Consider a generalized account of an individual whose life was defined by tending a vast expanse of agricultural land.
Okay, an agricultural worker.
For eras, the paradigm of this family's endeavor was defined by an inherited belief in hard, unyielding toil with only marginal returns. The soil was viewed as an adversary.
So the belief was you work yourself to the bone just to survive.
Right. There was a deeply entrenched belief that true prosperity, ease, and abundance were privileges reserved for others, a reality entirely inaccessible to a land worker.
A completely validated script of scarcity. The grandparents struggled, the parents struggled. So naturally, this individual believed the struggle was a geographic and economic law.
Exactly. Every drought, every poor yield served as confirmation bias, further hardening the ice. But a profound shift occurred for this person.
What do they do?
This individual stopped externalizing their power. They stopped believing the weather, the economic systems, or the supposed curse on the land were the ultimate arbiters of their fate.
They took their power back.
They undertook an aggressive audit of their inherited subconscious limitations. They began to align their 5 pillars to a frequency of boundless abundance.
They changed their identity from a victim of the elements to a master architect of prosperity.
Yes, they focused their attention solely on growth, innovation, and health, refusing to give emotional weight to the fear of ruin.
They completely changed the internal blueprint. And what was the result? Did the cosmic warehouse respond to this new product code, even though the physical land remained exactly the same?
The response was absolute and paradigm shattering. By maintaining this new frequency, they altered their behavior, they recognized opportunities they previously filtered out, and they engaged with their environment from a state of expansive power rather than contracted fear.
So it changed how they interacted with the world.
Entirely. They experienced a magnificent leap in prosperity in a remarkably brief passage of time. The external world morphed to match their new internal frequency.
That is incredible.
The yield of the land, the unexpected avenues of opportunity, the sheer velocity of their success completely defied the historical patterns of their entire lineage. The dense, frozen ice of generational struggle became the powerful steam that drove a total revolution in their reality.
That story is the ultimate proof that the environment is secondary to the frequency. The warehouse only delivers what you are prepared to receive.
It really is.
And this brings up a really profound insight for the listener. We started this conversation by talking about the deep, isolating frustration of realizing you are repeating the cycle.
Yes, that terrible feeling of being the one who is constantly fighting the current.
The one who feels completely out of place in their own family. But there is a beautiful, ultimate irony hidden in that pain.
What is the irony that stands out to you?
The very fact that you are aware of the cage, the fact that you feel like a black sheep in your lineage, that you look at the inherited beliefs of your family and feel a profound, uncomfortable friction.
Yes, the friction.
The fact that you question the reality presented to you, that discomfort is not a sign that you are broken. That friction is the precise, undeniable indicator that you possess the necessary power to break the cycle.
That is beautifully said.
Think about it. The ancestors who blindly accepted the script didn't feel the friction. They just walked the path, entirely asleep to the cage.
They just played their part in the rerun.
Exactly. The fact that you were agitated by the script, the fact that you are searching for a way out means your awareness has evolved past the programming. You are the one holding the match. You're the one capable of heating the ice.
That is a phenomenal observation, and it reframes the entire struggle. The friction is the awakening.
It is the first step.
Discontent with the phantom script is the absolute first requirement for writing a new one. It signifies that your conscious awareness has outgrown the confines of the inherited subconscious programming.
You are no longer just a passive vessel for misdirected energy.
Right. You are actively becoming aware of your capacity to direct it. Let's bring this grand narrative full circle now.
Let's do it. Because we began in a very dark, suffocating place.
We began with the overwhelming despair of waking up and feeling doomed to repeat the inherited mistakes of the past.
The feeling of being crushed under the ancient, unyielding weight of a generational curse, trapped in a cosmic warehouse that only sends you pain.
But the journey through the mechanics of reality, understanding the pillars, the brain's filters, and the law of polarity, reveals a magnificent truth.
What is the final truth here?
Inheriting generationally misdirected energy does not mean you are cursed. It means you have inherited an immense reservoir of raw, moldable power.
Because it's all just energy.
Exactly. The heavier the inherited burden, the more formless, kinetic energy is available to you once you learn to transmute it.
You are not the victim of your lineage. You are the designated alchemist of your family line.
The alchemist, yes.
You are uniquely positioned, perhaps the very first in a vast constellation of generations, to possess the awareness required to turn eras of solid, unyielding ice into an extraordinary upward surge of steam. You are the one who gets to rewrite the code.
And that is the ultimate realization of personal sovereignty. The most profound, breathless liberation occurs when you finally perceive the true architecture of your reality.
When you finally see the cage for what it is.
You walk up to the heavy iron door of your ancestral cage, the door you believed was locked by fate, by curses, by external villains, by the sheer weight of history, and you realize a staggering truth.
Which is?
That door never actually had a lock.
It was never locked from the outside.
Never. It was held shut solely by the sheer weight of your own inherited belief. The moment you change your belief, the moment you align your 5 pillars to a new frequency and stop pushing against the phantom, the door simply swings open on its own.
And stepping through that door isn't just about escaping the pain of the past. It's about claiming the absolute authority to author the future.
It is about writing a new reality.
So we leave you, the listener, with a final, lingering thought to carry into the rest of your day as you look at the patterns of your own life.
Something to truly consider.
If nothing is true in your reality until your subconscious mind accepts it as absolute law, what incredibly audacious, breathtaking new law will you write into existence the very moment this conversation ends?